Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Sean, thank you for coming on and being my guest today.
Of course.
So I'm excited to talk about today's topic. The last episode we did was about how to hire a contractor, basically. And the whole premise of why we did that show was because in this crazy market, spring 2022, buying and selling houses is a bit frenzied. And so I think people are starting to consider their options, like doing home renovations or building a new house. And I've had various people talk to me and ask me, well, if I do want to build my own house, like who do I even talk to? Do I talk to an architect? Do I hire a design build firm? And, I can speak in generalities, but truly I've never gone through the process myself. Yeah. And I've worked, well, not directly worked with you, but I've known about you and your projects for a very long time and followed OPaL, your company, which I think is just incredible. You guys do some great work.
Thank you.
Actually, side note, I posted about your Naylor Court listing on my Instagram recently, and I got rave reviews. Everybody was talking about how
so
lovely
cute.
and
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring you on, and I'm also going to tell everybody right in the beginning as they're listening, you're also a licensed realtor, which I think is really cool because you can come across or you can come at this from all angles. Whereas I don't think most realtors actually truly understand the nitty gritty of all the differences of these things. So we're going to come at this from like, what is it? So today's topic really is, what is a design build? How does it work? Like what, and just so lead us through. So I don't know if you want to just give us a brief background kind of how you got into it. I'm sure people would love to hear that and then we can kind of dig in.
Sure. Well, actually, I started selling new homes for big builders in the suburbs in the mid 90s. So that's where I was kind of successful at it. Just because people say, I'm not the strongest closer or the strongest whatever, but my passion for whatever I'm selling, people say is kind of infectious. And I see that about my personality as well, that it's when I love what I'm selling, it does carry over to whoever else is in earshot because I can kind of get excited about something. And then, so I started doing that in the 90s for EYA, an urban townhome builder, and NV Homes out in the suburbs. And I literally won almost every award you can win for selling new homes in the whole country and did well. And I saved my shillings, and because I was really doing that to have my own business. And I treated every model home that I was in as my own little storefront. And I loved literally every minute of it because I worked holidays and weekends, and I was so addicted to selling those houses that because I had an end game of starting my own company. So I saved all my money. And then in 2001, started my own company, my own home building company, and did that for maybe 15, 18 years. And a lot of lenders and a lot of people had said, Sean, you should really probably look at doing custom homes and renovations. I'm like, no, it's not really for us. That's not really who we are. And, turns out that we probably should have done it 10 years before. And so we have been doing renovations and custom homes for about 5 or 6 years, maybe. And, So part of our company concentrates on our new for sale homes in the district, and part of it concentrates on doing renovations and custom homes for regular people. Yeah.
That's really awesome. I mean, so not only can you speak about it from all angles because you're an agent, but you have done all of the different bits and pieces as well.
Yeah.
So I think it really makes you a great guest for today to be able to outline the differences for people, because there truly are, a decent amount of differences, I think, when it comes to the process and what speaks to a person more or less. So, Well, anyway, so your story is incredible. And congrats. It sounds like you've just really been successful at all of it so far. It's everyone's dream.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I started the company, I didn't want to spend any of my savings on life expenses. So I got my real estate license, because you don't need to have your license to sell for big builders. Because as an employee, you don't need a license. But I got my license so that I could do resales, just to have income coming in so I didn't spend my savings. And what's interesting about that is when I started doing resales, it took off like a freaking cancer. I couldn't shut it off. Like, this girlfriend referred to that girlfriend, this condo, like I couldn't, I was so, and I was getting mad at myself because the real estate business was becoming so busy, I was mad at myself for letting that happen because that's not really who I see myself as. So when people call me a realtor, like, actually, I'm not that. I don't feel like that. But what it actually does really, really help me when I'm talking to, when any random person calls us for, and I'm not kidding, the renovation thing has gotten crazy busy. We get probably 10 requests a week for people to look at renovations, or maybe more, but at least 10. And we don't go on all of them because we can't do certain parts of, we have to stick to geographically feasible areas. We're doing one kitchen pretty far out that just is a friend of mine, but it's hard to keep up with all of it. But with having that sales experience, and I sell our own homes, not only to save the commission, but also then I feel more control over it, and no one can really represent one of my homes, I don't think, better than I can. And I know that most developers probably should not sell their own homes because they may get in the way of the sale. And I think I know better than to step on that, because the ultimate goal is to sell the house. And so I try not to step on myself that way. But when I go on these renovations appointments, to be able to speak to the fact that just this week, I think, just a couple days ago, I forget one kitchen that we were talking about, actually just about a mile south of where we are, down MacArthur Boulevard, I was able to speak very, very well to the fact that whatever they did to that house, they weren't going to outpace their neighborhood, that they could spend $500,000, $700,000, $800,000 on their house. And given that I know what homes sell for in the area, just instinctually, having grown up in the industry a little bit as well. So it really does help having that sales background that I can speak to. Look, if you spend $250,000 on this kitchen and addition on the back of your house, you're still going to be fine as far as an equity position in your house. Like, don't worry about it. Your neighborhood can carry that kitchen.
That's huge. That's huge. Okay. So let's take a step back for 2 seconds. And why don't you just explain to people, if they were to hire you for a complete design build, what does that mean? What does that entail?
So it means something different to every person, to every house, every geography. And that's the interesting part. There is no rule of thumb as to what's more affordable as far as like building an all new home or building a renovation, or it's individual to that person, the house that they're in, their budget, and their tolerance for it. Because I just in the last 10 to 12 months, I've been part of my initial meeting is like, look, this is going to test your tolerance and your patience like nothing has ever tested you before. If we can set the expectations that this is going to be a very challenging few months for you as far as product supply, pricing, people actually showing up to do the job when they're supposed to do the job as far as the trades go, because everyone's so overwhelmed. Just setting all of their expectations for that is really paramount, especially in today's world. But as when it gets to a renovation, it's really different for every house, and it's going to depend upon the condition of the home and what they can spend on the house.
So if somebody were to hire, say, a design build firm versus just hiring an architect, like basically the design build firm in theory is doing everything under one umbrella, right? You're handling everything.
Well, we do both. So we do renovations for architects outside of our company. So if we're doing 12 renovations right now, probably 4 to 6 of them have been designed by outside architects. The rest have been designed by one of our architects. So we do both. Okay. And I think where you were going was the benefit, to compare and contrast those two options. When you speak to an architect, I think that they are going to feel that when you go with a design build firm, from the architect's point of view, you're going to be limited to that architect and that creativity and that person, and it may not be all that you're looking for. Where clearly, if you look at our track record, we have 400 or 500 photos on Howells, and we've won DC House of the Year, like a lot. And so if you're in any of our model homes at an open house, you can see people stop at our houses and take photos of our house. Like, that just doesn't happen to everybody. So our architecture is kind of awesome and creative. And But so I think a lot of people would go to that architect because that's probably how their brain would function. That's where we go to first. We have to have a design first, and certainly there is a need for that. And if you have an architect with a certain point of view and a certain aesthetic that you love, then that's where you need to go, because that's where that's where your heart is calling you, and that's actually what you need. But so I think for a design, what happens sometimes with that situation is that the architects aren't always, not all of them, but not always completely up to speed on what things are going to cost. Different codes or building regulations that a lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So a lot of people that come to us with outside plans, the architect might have given them a budget that is not based in reality right now. And so we do a lot to help protect the architect and the customer from that. If we can get the earlier that we can get involved with the outside architect, the better, as far as us being able to chime in on the structural designs or the mechanical engineering. That's kind of important, because you certainly do want the builder's opinion on that as things are progressing. But we do it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, if we were to really just summarize it for people, that when you're hiring somebody to do a complete design build, it's kind of soup to nuts. That firm, that company, in this case, if you're the ones doing it, your company, then you're trying to make sure that the disconnects are minimal, and you're kind of handling them internally or with your team if and when they happen. So communication, in theory, should be a little bit more seamless, and that you're already committed to one another because you're working with each other in this one company or on this one thing. Versus it's a little bit.
The most of the time, the customer won't even know that there was a hiccup. They won't even know that the architect will put the wrong size beam in the home, that was discovered during structural design, and that we just took care of it, and it just kind of happened behind the scenes. And that's kind of, ideally, you don't want the homeowners to see the entire sausage made. You want it to be a smooth process for them. And so, yeah, but it works the same way with an outside architect. That architect, if they realize a problem, they'll contact us directly. We fix the problem. We order the correct beam. We change the footer. We do whatever without really contacting the homeowners, unless it's something that needs to be decided upon as far as cost or aesthetics.
Right. I mean, something you said before about the talking to people about their tolerances and about how, and understanding that it's going to be a tough process. My sister's in the middle of choosing what to do with a half bath, and she's completely stressing out about it because she said, I never realized how many choices there would be. And I mean, literally without fail, this happens to almost every single person, right? It's like exciting until you actually have to do it, and you get presented with like 8 gajillion options for tile, and then 5,000 vanities and whatever else. So if you're doing a complete home renovation or a complete new build, when you're working with a company that's kind of covering it all, again, in theory, there's exceptions to every rule, but in theory, it should be a lot less pressure on you, because they might say, listen, we're going to give you 5 options of things that we know will work, of things that we know are in stock, of things that we know go together, versus, hey, we're going to take this design and we're going to bring it to here, and we're going to then try to find those pieces that match this or whatever. So I think that that's a really important point. And when I've been talking to my clients about who to choose and what to explore, for the people who want as little responsibility as possible outside of paying, then finding one kind of umbrella company who can theoretically handle it all makes really good sense, because you have to shop around less. And again, you might not have to communicate quite as much with all of the different people.
Yeah. So again, that kind of depends upon the client. We have 2 clients right now that are limited with their budget, and I think their budget predicts or determines what choices they're really going to have. And so we have people that come in with budgets that aren't able to stick to the budgets at all. But for the most part, for these two particular people, they know what they can spend. They're not going to spend over it. And every decision that we present to them is doing our best to stay within that world. But then we certainly do have customers that may have a budget in the beginning, but that will evolve over time as they learn more about the process, or sometimes that people will put their foot down on something that this is really important to me, and I'm willing to spend the money on this particular thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that you're mentioning kind of costs and stuff, I think that's a question that a lot of people end up having, which is, does it cost more if you have one company doing everything versus if you hire the architect and then you hire the builder and you hire the interior designer? How cost effective wise, this kind of, I think, goes to pros and cons.
Yeah. So I don't think
how does that work?
I don't think there's actually a cost difference in what I have noticed. Depending upon the architect, I can think of two in the area that are incredibly expensive, but people are going to go to them regardless, just because they like that aesthetic. One is incredibly contemporary. One is a little bit more traditional, but they're incredibly expensive. With a smaller architecture firm, I don't think that there's a cost difference actually between using design build, because we still have to pay our architect. They're still going to, if they're doing design in a metropolitan area like this, they're still going to have a certain salary that they want to make, which is going to be comparable to what they're going to make at another firm. And then the cost that so I think that you do it more as like, if you want to manage an architect and hopefully manage that relationship to the builder, great. If you don't, and you trust and you like the designs of what's been put out by the design build firm, as far as their track record goes, then I think it's just less headache. It's less for you to have to manage. You don't have to worry about the cost difference between what the architect might think, because they're not out swinging a hammer every day compared to the company that is swinging the hammer and designing the product. So I think it's going to be the same costs.
That's good to know, because I've heard different things. I mean, that's why I wanted to have you on, right? Is like you do it from both angles. I was always under the impression that a design build company theoretically was going to cost more, but you were paying for that level of, or maybe I should say the lack of necessary kind of communication and managing. I mean, DC is such a type A, high kind of driven, massive work focused city area that people don't totally have the time to manage this. I mean, they might want to, they might not want to, but regardless, like, time is time. We only have a limited amount. So I was always under the impression that, you're going to pay a little bit more for design build, but that's the trade-off.
Yeah, no, actually, if there was a cost difference, I think it would be a little bit more affordable just based on what I know of normal architecture firms. But I think it's marginal. I think at the end of the day, it's all going to even out. I would just go with someone that I knew could build it too.
So I mean, that's nice to hear, honestly, because I think cost is such a big thing right now. I mean, it's always a big thing. Everyone always cares about money, but we all heard how lumber was, wood was priced ridiculously high when the pandemic started, and windows were on a 8-month back order, which I think windows are a little bit better now, if I recall.
Depends.
Yeah. But like it's stressed people out to a degree that I think it's just changed over the last couple of years. Like, renovations have never been something that you roll your eyes at. It's a significant cost, but I mean, it's just changed so much to the point where you couldn't predict it. Right. You couldn't really predict the cost so much. And that's been really hard for people. And so if they can stomach what the cost is going to be now, I think a lot of people have a tough time then when it changes from what they've already stomached. Right. So it's like, okay, I thought it was going to be 10. No, it's going to be 20. And now you're like, no, it's 30. It's like, it's hard for people to manage that, I think.
Yeah, we had one customer at the beginning of the pandemic who thought that the cost would go down on their renovation because the world was coming to a slowdown. And it was the exact opposite of what was happening. And at this point, 2 years into it, I think everyone is well aware of how long it's taking to get things. From what I understand, a sheet of plywood is expected to be $60 a sheet this summer, where it was $12 2 years ago, which is an absolutely ridiculous increase. The flip side of that is now that interest rates are going up, and that's the conversation we're having with 2 to 3 renovations that we're doing right now, is like, what do you actually put it on hold for? Hopefully things are going to come down at the end of the year. Some people think that pricing will peak this summer. I kind of in that boat as well. But just like gas prices are not going to go down now that a barrel of crude is under $100, it's going to trickle. They say it feathers down. It's like a feather floating down. That's totally what will happen with lumber. It's not like somebody is going to open up Canada and then all of a sudden lumber is going to be back to $12. So I think it peaks this summer. I'm no expert, but I think it peaks and then trickles down towards the end of the year. But at the same time, then you have rates going up. So just get it over with. Just freaking.
Maybe I need an economist on every single episode to comment on all the.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, people look at you, they look at me, and they want us to give them the answers to these things. And it's kind of like, well, we wish we had the answers, right? But nobody has the answers. None of us predicted a pandemic, and so the fact the last 2 years have been. Been a complete shot in the dark half the time. But I mean, it's certainly, these are all things that you have to kind of consider as you're moving along, like what you think the trajectory is going to be. And it's a bit of a gamble, right? And so the thing is, we're talking about your home. And so I think people are more willing to just go, I might be paying over a little bit, but like, this is literally a roof over my head. This is where I go to enjoy my life when I'm not working, or maybe I'm working there too now. And so I think just people are willing to kind of do the dive in as long as they have an understanding-ish of how much things are going to cost.
Also another good point of view, because when you're selling new homes, you have to be able to convey to people the cost between, if I flash back to the 90s, when you're selling the Vanderbilt floor plan compared to the Great Falls. And well, this one's 500 square feet bigger. This one's on a better lot. So then you have to be able to compare monthly payments for everybody. And so like, I can do that just because it's in my DNA now. So we have another renovation in Southeast DC going on right now where the cost is a lot more than what she had anticipated. And so I'm able to speak to that, in that I think that if the costs are $80,000 more than what was in her budget, which is a significant number for her, that $80,000 translates into probably maybe $80 more a month in her payment. And when you can break it down like that into some, like, it's really not horrible, and you spread it over 30 years and she's not going anywhere. That's going to be her home for a while. And
no, I mean, that kind of conversation comes up all the time. I mean, we're kind of getting a little off topic, but it's fine, about people who are paying over right now. I mean, I don't know anyone who's buying a townhome in DC who's not escalating and spending $100, $200, sometimes $300,000 over, list price. And I was very lucky to win one very recently under contract for, I never thought it would escalate that high, right? We put this ridiculous high escalation on it. We're like, well, probably won't get there. And it literally went to their cap and we got it. But when you do break it down to the per month difference, it's not as significant as you think when you're looking at that number on a sheet of paper.
Right.
So I think that's good for people to kind of remember as they're thinking about either buying a home or renovating a home or, building a home in general, is that, it's not going to be quite as, it's not going to hit you in the gut quite as bad as you might think it is. So try to stay positive as you're going through the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's kind of all on my end. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. I mean, I think everybody should check out some of all of your listings that are available. They're just really incredible. I just want to say you do a really thoughtful job. I love everything you do from start to finish with your projects. And thank you for creating some beautiful things in and around DC.
Thanks. We actually just started putting our little sign. It just says, if it's an older historic home, it's a precast concrete sign. Is kind of cute. And it says, if it's an older home, it's been reimagined by OPaL. And then if it's a new one, it says by OPaL. And I literally, we don't even put it any place where people can really see it. It's in the little lower corner. Sometimes it'll be behind like a hedge or something. It's really just there so that when my kids are older, like they're 8 now, but I want them to be, because I love our houses. And I know, like, I want them when I'm not around to be able to do this walking tour through Logan and wherever, or Capitol Hill, where a lot of our, and just see, look at what my dad did, or look at what my granddad did. Like, and so it's really charming. I'm so proud of our houses, and they're really unique. They're not perfect and they're not for everybody, but they're incredibly charming. And I really do believe they're like such an asset to the city that has a lot of the same. So.
Well, there's a reason why I asked you on, because I do not like the same. I like things that are unique and different. I'm constantly peeling through every single listing looking for it. So anyway, well, thank you. I definitely appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.